Ethan Hayes had always dreamed of a quiet, peaceful life in the suburbs. After years of serving as a police officer, he decided it was time for a fresh start for his family. The small neighborhood they moved into was picture perfect, with tree-lined streets, perfectly trimmed lawns, and a sense of tranquility that seemed almost too good to be true. But Ethan, with his instincts as a lawman, couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, though he couldn't quite put his finger on it. Ethan's daughter, Lily, was the heart of their home. She was a brave little girl, but her heart condition made her life fragile. She couldn't play outside like other children. Her health required constant attention and specialized medical equipment. Her favorite spot was the porch, where she could feel the warmth of the sun on her face, surrounded by her medical gear, and watch the world go by. Ethan did everything he could to ensure that Lily had as normal a life as possible, despite the looming shadow of her illness. It wasn't long before they encountered Karen Parker, the HOA president. Karen was a woman who took pride in her power, perhaps too much pride. She was the self-appointed enforcer of all the neighborhood rules, and she had an unsettling habit of keeping a watchful eye on anyone who dared to stray from her definition of proper. Ethan thought she was just another overzealous neighbor, but he had no idea just how deeply her influence ran. Karen was the kind of person who thrived on control, and she had no patience for anyone who didn't fit her ideal of suburban perfection. At first, Ethan didn't think much of her comments. She gave him a few cold stares when she noticed the medical equipment on the porch, but she never directly addressed it, choosing instead to complain to the HOA, hoping that he would just fall in line with her vision of a picture-perfect neighborhood. But then, one afternoon, things escalated. Ethan had to step out for a quick errand, leaving Lily alone on the porch. She was well within his line of sight, and he could hear the soft hum of her medical equipment as he walked away. When he returned just a few minutes later, his heart dropped. Lily was chained to the porch. Her small hands were tightly bound by thick chains, and she looked terrified, her medical equipment disarrayed. The sight hit Ethan like a punch to the stomach. His first instinct was to rush to her side, checking for any signs of distress or discomfort. He unchained her quickly, his heart pounding in his chest. "Dad," Lily whispered, her voice shaky, tears welling up in her eyes. "I'm scared." Ethan hugged her tightly, trying to hide his own panic. He asked her what had happened, and through her tears, she explained that Karen had come to the porch, told her she was breaking HOA rules, and, in an act of cruel authority, had chained her there to teach her a lesson. Lily was too terrified to protest. Ethan, overwhelmed by both anger and fear, called for help, immediately contacting a local medic to ensure Lily's vitals were stable. His mind raced. How could someone, let alone a neighbor, treat a child like that? How could someone be so callous, so blind to the humanity of a child who was already struggling to survive? Once the medic arrived and confirmed that Lily was physically fine, Ethan's protective instincts took over. But beyond the fear for his daughter's health, a storm was brewing inside him. He wasn't just going to let this slide. Karen Parker had crossed a line, one that couldn't be ignored. The next day, Ethan confronted Karen. His voice was calm but firm as he demanded an explanation for her actions. Karen, ever so defensive and unapologetic, claimed that she was simply enforcing HOA rules that, in her mind, justified any means necessary to maintain the neighborhood's aesthetic integrity. Ethan could barely contain his disgust. It was as if she saw Lily not as a little girl in need of care, but as an inconvenience to her perfect, sterile vision of the world. Ethan wasn't about to let this slide. As the police chief, he had resources at his disposal, connections in law enforcement, legal counsel, and the support of the community. But he wasn't going to use his position of power just to punish Karen. He was going to make sure that this kind of behavior didn't happen again to anyone. Ethan began an investigation into Karen, uncovering a pattern of authoritarian actions in the HOA. She had used her position to bully and control neighbors, manipulating them into submission under the guise of rules. The more he uncovered, the more infuriated he became. Ethan knew that it wasn't just about punishing Karen, it was about sending a message that this kind of behavior had no place in their community. Word of Karen's actions spread quickly through the neighborhood. Neighbors who had been too scared to stand up to her before now found themselves emboldened by Ethan's stance. Slowly but surely, the tide began to turn. They rallied behind him, sharing their own stories of how Karen had harassed them for the smallest infractions. Some had been fined for trivial things like a stray leaf on the lawn or a garden gnome that wasn't up to Karen's standards. Others had been scolded for having a flag or sign that didn't fit with the HOA's aesthetic. Karen's reign of terror was unraveling, and she had no idea how to stop it. At the next whole meeting, Ethan stood before the board, the community behind him. His voice rang out, firm and unyielding, as he exposed Karen for what she truly was, a bully hiding behind a mask of authority. He made it clear that no one, not even the HOA president, was above the law. The crowd erupted in support, with several neighbors voicing their frustrations and demanding that Karen step down. It was the moment the neighborhood had been waiting for. Karen, once so powerful and untouchable, was left speechless. Her control over the HOA was gone, her reputation in tatters. It wasn't just a victory for Ethan, it was a victory for every person who had suffered in silence under Karen's rule. The atmosphere in the neighborhood shifted from fear to relief. For the first time in a long time, people felt like they had a voice. In the days that followed, Karen was forced to resign from her position as HOA president. The investigation into her actions led to serious consequences, and she was held accountable for her cruelty. Ethan had made sure of that. But it wasn't just about winning, it was about making sure Lily, and all the other children and families in the neighborhood, felt safe again. As the Hayes family stood together on their porch, with Lily smiling up at her father, Ethan couldn't help but feel a sense of peace. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but at least they had made it through this storm together. He had stood up for his daughter, and in doing so, he had changed the entire community. And while Karen's actions could never be undone, Ethan knew that the power of unity and justice had won the day. And with that, Ethan finally felt like the neighborhood was home again.